Hello, Norman, and thank you very much for being with us here on Ways So Bright. First question, of course, what inspired you to create a visual book?
That was what was offered. Basically, a company came to me that they make visual books. We call them coffee table books. Don't know if that translates into Italian. That sort of large scale book where it's better for photos. But to be honest, I mean, over the years, many people have asked me to write an autobiography, and I've no confidence as a writer. I've no confidence that my story warrants a book. And also the interesting bits of the book would be the naughty stuff.
Okay.
That's what people want to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
They want to know who I've drunk with, who I've slept with,
Absolutely.
And I don't really want to tell that story while my parents and my children can read it.
Yeah.
So, and I've forgotten all the good bits. The best bits were, so bad that I've forgotten them. But the idea of doing telling the story visually, I thought was more appealing. I mean, and if it was me, I'm not a big reader. Okay. In this day and age, everybody's on their phones. No one actually sits and reads a book. Yeah. But a coffee table book, you leave it out, and then your friends come around and they skip through. So that appealed to me, and also a lot of the content is like ephemera, like souvenirs, objects rather than stories. So I've always collected them, and I've got these big boxes full of press cuttings and photos and track sheets from the studio and old record boxes, old equipment and stuff like that. And I think that's what people like me like to see, the stuff, how it behind the scenes stuff. So it would always be quite a visual book if it was going to tell my story anyway. So we thought, I mean, there is writing and there's explanations of everything, but it's not a wordy book.
What role do you think visuals play in shaping the narrative of your music, and how does the book enhance the narrative?
I think visuals they're paramount. I mean, from the very early days of pop music, it was always you wanted to see what the singer looked like, and what they dressed like, and then when records, then the cover of the sleeve was very important. Back in the 60s and the 70s, the art on the cover of the record was really important. And then if you fast forward to today, everything that you do happens here online, and everything's filmed. I mean, that's if we'd had camera phones throughout my career, we could have maybe made a good visual documentary. But I didn't have a camera, I didn't have a camera phone, so I've only got the objects that were left. But I mean, the visuals, you can explain stuff about your personality. Sometimes they tell the story of the record, or sometimes they just become iconic, like the Fat Kid. Yeah. The Fat Kid has become so iconic, but the original, if you read the book, the original title of the album was Viva la Underachiever. And it was always about, it's okay to be slack. Everybody who lives in Brighton, we're all slackers. People in London, they're all go-getters and they want to do stuff and make money. People in Brighton are just like, if we make money, that's fine, but we just, let's sit happy, and when the sun comes out, nobody goes to work, and that was my kind of theme for the album. So it was going to be called Viva la Underachiever. But then while I was making the album, I had like 3 top 10 hits, and everyone said, who is the underachiever? Because you're overachieving. So we slightly changed the title, but I already had the picture, and the picture was supposed to be, it's okay to be an underachiever. He's got a beer in one hand, cigarette in the other. He's fat. He don't care, and that was the original thing. So sometimes you're telling the story with the visuals. I mean, obviously in my live show, we use visual, like a scrapbook of images that they don't tell a story. They're just there to excite people, to take the experience at a gig even more, trippy or exciting or give it impact. So I think there's the opposite end of the musical spectrum is someone like Bob Dylan, where you could just have one photo of Bob Dylan and then his lyrics.
Yes.
And you would read his lyrics and you'd read different things into his lyrics. My lyrics, there's not much to read into them. So we sort of spell it out with other things. But also, I mean, I love visual arts and these are the perks of my job. First, my job is I get to hang out with artists.
And a weird question, what's the most important thing you have learned about yourself through the book?
Ooh.
It's all about you, so...
I don't know how much I learned about myself. I mean, it definitely reminded me, you know, I've been doing this for 40 years and I've been alive for 61. And I was quite amazed how much I'd forgotten. You know, you do lots of things and you haven't got the room in your brain to remember them all. But I've got these boxes of stuff and I get things out and go, oh yeah, I remember that. So for me, it was more of a trip down memory lane, we say in English, you know, walk down your past. And, but I don't think it really, I didn't think I learned much about myself, but I remembered a lot about myself.
Any surprises of discoveries you found out again that you completely forgot?
Well, quite
something
famously,
that was gone.
I didn't realise that I'd met Cher. This isn't in the books. I didn't really, it's a bit offensive to share this story. But yeah, no, someone said, once in an interview, you know, like, what was it like, you know, with Cher? And I said, I've never met Cher. They went, oh, I thought you had, sorry. But then whilst researching the book, I found out I'd spent a whole evening with Cher.
So that was one of the things you found out.
I found pictures of me with Cher having a drink. It's like, oh, I have met Cher.
And how does the book reflect your personality and your sense of humor? That is very well known.
It definitely presents my personality. I tried not to make it over humorous on purpose, but there's kind of humor in everything I do. I don't take myself that seriously and I don't take life that seriously. So, but I didn't want, I mean, there was in the captions for the photos, some of them, the working captions were like kind of jokes. And then after I'd read the joke 3 times, it's like, maybe that's not funny. So the humor, not so much, apart from the fact that quite a lot of what I do is tongue in cheek. It's, you know, it's not meant to be too serious, but it definitely shows my personality. And I didn't realize how much I smoked. Like every other picture, I've got a cigarette in my hand in the days when I don't smoke anymore. But it definitely shows my personality. I mean, one thing I did learn about myself was that I was wearing Hawaiian shirts. I didn't realize that I've been wearing Hawaiian shirts all the way from when I was 5 to my first, and you know, one of my first gigs. We found a photo of one of my first gigs. I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt, but it's yeah. I mean, it's probably there's a part of my personality or a part of me that is slightly autistic, slightly driven about music, and I think, you know, the fact that I collected everything, I saved everything. Yeah. I think that comes across. My attention to detail and my, you know, obsession with music is almost on the spectrum. And, I think you understand that, you know, that's the main thing that drives me in life is the pursuit of how music connects people and how music changes our mood and affects us and soothes us and inspires us.
And what's the most personal piece in the book?
Oh, that's interesting. Since you haven't seen the book yet.
No, but something online. You can see something online.
The most personal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. For me, my favourite was, obviously you can't tell the story of me without telling the story of my partners. And there was a thing, it's like, you know, do you want to talk about your first wife? You know, do you want to talk about your second wife? Do you want to talk about your girlfriend, Bella? And it's like, yes, I do want to talk. It happened. But the thing is, I'm still friends with all of them. And my first wife gave me some of the pictures. She had these pictures that I didn't have from when we were married. And so the most personal thing was not glossing over the bad bits. You know, I talk about my drinking. I talk about my failed marriages, and the publishers were like, "Are you sure you want to you know, have a photo, you know, and will that be all right with your ex-wife? I'm like, yeah, she's fine. She gave me the picture, you know, and then realizing that I'm still friends with everybody from my whole life, you know, even my exes, we're still on good terms. So, I suppose that does say something about me.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, that I haven't made too many enemies, even from people you know, got divorced from.
There's anything you want to say about the cover art of the book? So you got a very famous picture, it's been modified, of course, but you want to say something about that?
Well, in the same way that album covers have to be iconic and that they help sell the record, I thought the front cover had to be a very safe image that just made people think this is a book about Norman. You know, I didn't want to get too clever, so it is just like an iconic photo of me that we've used in a lot of flyers and you know, gig posters and over the years. So yeah, that was, yeah, the priority was to make it look like, spell out, this is a book. It's not over arty, it's just a book about this guy.
Can you tell us about any collaborations or influence that shaped the book?
Well, the biggest influence on it was my friend Keith Davey. He's actually he's the father of my daughter's best friend, and it was him that the publishers used to get to me. So he's a graphic designer, and he does album sleeves, and he does a lot of the sort of reissue box sets and things. And they got in touch with him and said, "Do you know Norman?" And he said, "Yeah." And they said, "Do you think you can persuade him into doing a book?" And then the carrot on the stick was that he's, you know, and you can design it. And so he instigated the whole process, but also he did all the work. You know, we would spend afternoons, I'd get a box out and we'd just go through it, and he would go and he would say, "Oh, that's good. That's not, that's good." And then he would take them away and he would scan them, and, you know, he'd work the man hours involved. If I spent 100 man hours on this book, he spent 1,000. And so, and he became, yeah, my sort of conduit of, cause I've got so much stuff. It's like, what's interesting to other people? I know it's interesting to me, but is it interesting so he shaped, and we did all the writing together. Because the writing bit, they kept saying, "Oh, when are you going to do the writing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'll do it, you know, I've got next week, I'll do it, you know." And then it went, and in the end, he had to sit over me with a gun to my head. So, write this, I'll help you. And he helped with the typing. And yeah, so Keith has been, you know, and halfway through the book, we realized it wasn't, you know, by Norman Cook, designed by Keith Davey. It was by Norman Cook and Keith Davey. So that's how it's credited. So he's been the biggest influence, and he, as you know, he did all the donkey work and all the boring stuff, and but also shaped how it looks, and his graphic design style is there throughout the book.